Good morning, beloved friends. It's such a joy to be gathered here today with each and every one of you. Thank you so much for being here. And even as we begin, as we just gather together in God's presence, may His blessing be found here. May His presence continue to touch you. May His grace that is sufficient and His power that strengthens be with you now and always. So this August is a special month for us as a church. We are taking time again to talk about who God has called us to be as a church. Because every once in a while we have to remember this is not just a place we come to. This is not just a place we belong to. This is also a place where we become something, where we do something. Becoming is in two ways. Your life is transformed by God's power and grace to be more like Christ. You're becoming something because of being here. And secondly, this is also a place where we become part of God's dream and work in our beloved city. So God has gathered us to become something, to continuously be changed because of being here, and to be part of His dream and work in this city and in the lives of many. So this is a place for more. And one of the things that's coming up in a few weeks is that on 5th October, we will be celebrating our 8th anniversary. So get ready, and you are invited. Mark it on your calendar, and let us come together and praise God and thank Him for the far that He's brought us. A couple of weeks ago, I was talking to a friend of mine who told me, when I told him we are turning 8, he told me, do you know the significance of 8? He told me number 8 is about beginning again. And I thought that captures where we are at so well. It's been 7 years of becoming, 7 years of starting up. But I think we are beyond that space, that phase now. And it's not a time to begin again and start up. It's a time to become all that God had in mind when He imagined us as a church. And so some of the things that has happened over the last 8 years is that you personally got connected here and became a part of this community. And that is a gift and a joy in itself. As we enter the 8th year and beyond, what is there? Right? What else is there? And guess what? One of the things I've been hoping for and praying for as we enter the 8th year and beyond is that there can be more of God in this place. There can be more of God in our lives. We can see more of God moving in our city through us. That will take a lot. That will take a lot. That is why this year, part of one of my major celebrations is that we have been averaging 200 people in this community. We are a 200-strong community here. And I'm really excited for that 200 of us. It has taken 7 years for us to be consistently a community of 200 people. And because we are there, I've been sensing a whisper telling us we are already on our way to the next 200. That means in some months, perhaps in a shorter time than it has taken us to be 200, we will be a community of 400. The next 200 are already on their way here. So we started this year with a call and an invitation that was themed towards fruitfulness. That was our theme in January, because we were sensing that could be a theme of the season we are in. That could be the kind of journey we are taking this year. And we're in the process of working that out. And I am excited to see just how it connects to that thought of the next 200 towards fruitfulness. And even as the next 200 come to join us, what will they find? What will they find? And so we are saying, we who are here, the first 200 are the founders of what will happen next. The next 200, what they will find here and beyond. That is why we are having this conversation of our core values this month, because we want to get a picture of the gift that we are as a community, the gift that we cultivate and embody, the gift that we represent by being Journey ICC, so that as each of the next 200 and beyond come, they find a community that embodies certain ideals. So last week we talked about embracing God's radical grace. And you know what? That is a powerful gift. That is a powerful gift that sometimes is not talked about so much. But as long as we are this church, we shall strive, we shall endeavor to be a people who embrace God's radical grace. And we hope and pray that any new person joining this place shall feel it, shall sense it, shall taste it. That is why we are calling it, this series, We Are Called, where it's even an identity. We are called Embracing God's Radical Grace. So this month we're journeying through the 5 core values we have as Journey ICC. Embracing God's radical grace, serving with compassion, connecting with kindness, stewarding with generosity, and wholeheartedly present. The thing about core values is that they only matter when they come alive, when they are embodied, when they are practiced. That is why we are looking at them. We want to learn them so that we can embody them and live them out so much that they become our identity. And that is why we call this series We Are Called. Yeah, we are called each of those values. They are our name. They are our identity, because we want them to be what defines us. So that is who we are. And I pray that even through this week, you have become a person who sees more of God's grace, who sees the need of God's grace, who is on the way to surrendering more to God's grace. That's the journey we are on. And also, the reason why August will be special for us is that we have a major announcement on August 31st. We even have a slide for it. Every once in a while, in the life of a community, there comes an invitation to step into a change. Who loves change? Right? Such is the time for us. Such is the time for us. We shall announce a major change about how we shall be known as we move forward into the future that God has called us to. I met someone this week and they were saying, August 31st is so far. Tell me now. So today I am here to tell you, it's not too far. Be here on August 31st. And for those of you who've been guessing, right? What has come to me, they're guessing. Anyway, yeah, that's exciting. Let's walk this journey together. And so that's why we are even on this series, We Are Called. And here's something exciting. We're doing this series church-wide. The little ones, the teenagers are also going through the same conversations. And it can be a wonderful way to check in with them afterwards and to build this conversation. So today, we shall look at We Are Called Serving with Compassion. Our vision states people and our world coming alive in the love of God as modeled by Jesus. God's love is so central in that vision statement. It's about the love of God. It's also about Jesus and how he embodies that so well. And I can tell you for sure, if you've been part of this community, we make a big deal about Jesus, his ways, and about following him. Even as we said last week, grace, God's grace is how we are awakened into the reality of the love of God in our lives as it is touching us and shaping us and changing us. God's grace is God's love in motion in our lives and in our hearts. So I was thinking about serving with compassion, this core value we are talking about today. And I think it's the next step. That's what it is. It is how we embody God's love through our lives. It is how we wear it and live it out among each other. So God's grace transforms us within. Serving with compassion is how we engage with one another in God's love. So as we think about this, I want to start with this example. You may have encountered this scenario a couple of times, maybe in a movie or in real life. You're waiting in line in a particularly busy day in a supermarket. And you're wondering, why did everyone come shopping that particular day? And it's just one of those busy, exhausting, stressful days. The cashiers are obviously busy and pressured. And then the shouting happens. An impatient customer complains and lets it out on the cashier. You may have seen moments like those. You may have been one of those. I have a memory also being that person, right? The thing is, nobody has ever been inspired by such moments. If you're an observer, it breaks your heart. You pity the poor cashier. It is not inspiring. It is draining. It's true, something must have justified that explosion. But the conditions always demand a bit of patience. If there's one thing I want to share today about serving, is that serving is never easy. Serving is never easy. From the beginning to the very end, we encounter major obstacles. Major obstacles. So today I want to look at serving with compassion from the lens of the obstacles that we face. So a few main obstacles that I put together are, we face the obstacle, serving is hard because of the conveniences we are addicted to or we need. Yeah. First of all, we live in an age, we all long for a life that is convenient, comfortable, a life of ease, and we live at a time where we are entitled. We know what is right for us. We know our rights. We know what is due for us. So these four things tend to make serving a little difficult in our day and age. When we look at our country, when we look at our politicians, I personally always have one question. What would happen if they served people? Why is it so hard for them to serve? And you'll find that some of those obstacles always get in the way. Yes, there are obstacles, but today we will also hear of another invitation. Our faith was never meant to be in those categories. Our faith was never meant to be convenient, comfortable, easy, and entitled. And here's why. Our faith is about engaging our world that is at the same time facing many challenges and broken parts. We are part of a world that is crying out and longing for wholeness. Jesus looks at this world and sees harassed and helpless, a lot of it. And so following Jesus is a life of always stepping out beyond the comfort zones and acting in loving and healing ways. Following Jesus demands that we get up and leave our conveniences, get up and leave our comforts, get up and leave our ease and our entitlement behind and join him in the work of remaking this world. If being met by God's grace, like we talked about last week, is so beautiful and transforming to your life, then you are to get up from where you are and live life where many others are being touched by that grace. And you begin to get the idea of serving with compassion, which is attending to others around us and the world around us with God's love. Attending, engaging those who are around us and the world around us with God's love. Serving with compassion is a reminder to us that we are called to a faith that goes against the grain of our default settings. Left to our own default settings, we will want that which is convenient. We will want that which is comfortable and easy. And we will be entitled to a couple of things, right? We are used to a wide selection of options. We live in our life that is increasingly tuning in to our default settings of convenience and comfort. But in the midst of that world, a life of faith, serving with compassion, is going against the grain of all that and serving. So that's what I would like us to think about over the next few minutes. And we're going to look at a story from the scriptures of serving at its best. Serving at its best. John 13, verse 1 to 11. John 13, verse 1 to 11. There are always people with the hard copy Bibles. And because the pages turn a little loudly, I know when everybody has found it. John 13, verse 1 to 11. Let's read together. Now, before the festival of the Passover, Jesus knew that his hour had come to depart from this world and go to the Father. Having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. The devil had already put it into the heart of Judas, son of Simon Iscariot, to betray him. And during supper, Jesus, knowing that the Father had given all things into his hands, and that he had come from God and was going to God, got up from the table, took off his outer robe, tied a towel around himself. Then he poured water into a basin and began to wash the disciples' feet and to wipe them with a towel that was tied around him. He came to Simon Peter, who said to him, "Lord, are you going to wash my feet?" Jesus answered, "You do not know what I'm doing, but later you will understand." Peter said to him, "You will never wash my feet." Jesus answered, "Unless I wash you, you have no share with me." Simon Peter said to him, "Lord, not my feet only, but also my hands and my head." Jesus said to him, "The one who has bathed does not need to wash except for the feet, but is entirely clean. And you're clean, though not all of you." For he knew who was to betray him. For this reason he said, "Not all of you are clean." The word of the Lord for us. Thanks be to God. The power of this story is because of who it reveals God to be, and therefore who we should be as a result of being shaped by this God. The story begins with profound statements of Jesus' identity. He is very aware of who he is at that moment. In verse 1, we read that the time had come for him to leave this world. The time had come for him to leave this world. He knew that. He knew that he was running out of time. He knew that he only had a little time. He didn't have the pleasure of traveling around Judea a lot more and teaching and performing miracles. He only had a little time. Actually, this story takes place on Thursday night, and he was crucified on Friday. So he did not have much time. So everything moving forward from that moment to Jesus, it is benediction. This is how I'm leaving you. I want you to remember. Everything takes on a whole new level of importance. Still in verse 1, we learn that he had intended, what he had intended to be and to do all along. We read these profound statements. Having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. Right? So it begins by telling us who this God is. Who this God is. This is who God is, and this is what God does all the time, loving his own and loving them to the fullest that it can be like. Even in this moment for Jesus, he knew that. Even as time was just to run out, the one thing that was left, the one thing that remains is love. John 13 is framed in love. It opens with a God who has loved his own and loves them to the very end. It concludes with a God who says, "A new commandment I give you. Love one another." This is who God is. This is what is most central to God. Love. Right? Love. He came, he saw, he loved. And then in verse 3, we also begin to see another statement of God's identity, of Jesus' identity. And this is what we read. "And during supper, Jesus, knowing that the Father had given all things into his hands and that he had come from God and was going back to God." Jesus is aware of who he is. Time is running out. His purpose has been to love. And this one statement tells us about where he sits in the grand scheme of things. He had come from God and he was going back to God. God had given everything into his hands. This is a statement of power and authority. He had it all. He had it all. The question is, what is beyond him when he is described like that? Nothing. Everything is under his rule. Everything is in his hands. At this point, Jesus knew that he had all power and all authority from God. And what does he do? Yeah? Jesus had the top seat in all creation and had come from God and was going back to God. And so, he does something with that power. With that power. The power of this story is revealing to us who God is and who we should be as a result of being shaped by that God. A God who loves to the very end. A God who is all-powerful. And then what does that God do with all the power that he has? He gets up and he serves. He gets up and he serves. As I was thinking about this message today, I came to the realization that serving, at the heart of it, has to do with power and love. Serving at the heart of it has to do with power and love. We live in a world that either tends to be so obsessed with power without love, and that is what we see in a lot of our broken politics and in all manner of leadership abuses. Power without love. On the other hand, there are many people who get to see love without power, and it tends not to accomplish much, and they give up on the whole notion of love altogether. In 1967, shortly before he died, Martin Luther said the following words in a speech. "Now, we got to get this thing right. What is needed is a realization that power without love is reckless and abusive, and love without power is sentimental and anemic. Power at its best is love implementing the demands of justice. Power at its best is love implementing the demands of justice, and justice at its best is love correcting everything that stands against love." And this is what we must see as we move on. Right? Power and love together. When Jesus acknowledged the place he stands in the universe of things, in the power systems of this world, in all of creation, he says, "I stand at the pinnacle. I stand on top of it all." He got up and bent down to serve. We serve not because we are weak and helpless. We serve because we are powerful. We serve because serving is translating love into action. I love how John tells this story. It's a minute by minute Maybe it's a moment by moment description of things. And so I want to read verse 3 to 5 again. And this is what John writes. And during supper, Jesus, knowing that the Father had given all things into his hands, and that he had come from God and was going back to God, he wielded immense power. Jesus got up from the table, took off his outer robe, tied a towel around himself, then poured water into a basin and began to wash the disciples' feet and to wipe them with a towel that was tied around him. With all the power and authority in his hands, he got up from the table, disrobed himself, tied a towel around himself, and bent low to wash some dirty feet. This was absolutely radical, even to the disciples. You know, by default, the disciples show us that they were people like us. We are not that quickly drawn to serving. We always tend to gravitate to that which serves us more. By default, the disciples whom Jesus would eventually wash their feet, they wanted to get the important positions of greatness in the kingdom of God, and they were arguing about it. And Jesus invites them to a whole new paradigm, that one of service. And in this moment, when they were gathered around that table, I wonder why none of them got up to wash the feet first. None of them got up to wash the feet first. The story is told that in those ancient days, they would walk around everywhere in sandals. It was dusty roads. And it was custom that every time they entered and gathered in someone's home, they would at least be presented with water to wash their feet. Or if they had gone to a wealthy person's home who had slaves, the slave would come and wash people's feet. And so, at this time when they gathered for the Last Supper, nobody had invited them. They had actually prepared it for themselves. And they got into that room and they discovered, this is on us. There's no one to either present us with water to wash feet, or there's no one to wash people's feet. So I tell you this because they were all aware that they were having dinner with dirty feet. It was that just one of those unspoken and unsaid conversations. Maybe one of the disciples thought, they all knew it, but, enyewe leo, we'll just have to do it like that. Even among the disciples, just like us, serving is never easy. But then Jesus, being the master teacher, realized that this is quite the moment. You can tell this is the one teaching he had wanted to do for so long. For so long, he had waited until the last moment, and he realized that this is the one moment to pass on one of my most important lessons. And so what does he do? He gets up. He takes off his outer robe. He ties a towel around himself, pours water on a basin, and begins to wash his disciples' feet and wipe them with the towel. That very act of removing his outer robe has been described to be the equivalent of a man taking off his suit, his coat, his tie, and even his shirt and trousers. It was shocking. It was not just a light thing, right? So once again in this moment, Jesus is doing an act of service that begins to go against the grain of our default settings. Serving is not convenient and comfortable. Serving is not easy and fancy. Serving is not desirable. And it's not for the entitled. But Jesus is trying to tell us, serve anyway. So he gets up from the table. That's a very telling statement. Those days they used to have tables that were kind of a U in shape. Forget Leonardo da Vinci's famous painting, right? Where they're all straight. It was more of a U. Jesus, being the master teacher, had to sit at the head of the table. He had the seat of greatest status in that table, but he got up from it. He stepped aside from the conveniences of status. He stepped aside from the conveniences of title. He stepped aside and moved to a place of service. Then we are told that he removed his outer robes and tied a towel around him and bent to wash dirty feet. Remember, a room full of people who are asking, who will do it? Who will do it? Do you know one of the things that can happen quite easily in that moment? I can see one of the disciples volunteering and saying, Jesus, can I wash your feet? And Jesus can say, oh, sure, yeah, you can do that. And he can go and wash his feet. And he will feel good. We are used to a culture and a system where we serve upwards. And we know, that guy, he will be noticed by Jesus. He will be found pleasing to Jesus. But one of the dynamics I think that was involved in this scenario that made the disciples hesitate is that you could not just wash Jesus' feet and leave the other 12. There would be a big question on that. And so I imagine they hesitated. And so Jesus gets up from his position of status. Yeah, and that's all they can see on that table. But beyond that, they do not know that he wields all power and authority in all creation. He still gets up with that, and he decides to be the one who serves. He decides to be the one who serves. I was thinking about it, right? Many moments when this sermon has been preached, the husband goes home and washes his wife's feet, right? As an application, kind of. Maybe I'm going to let you off the hook from that. But that is not the application. I see my wife protesting. Well, you can wash one pair of feet. Yeah? And you can be motivated if it is your spouse. But can you imagine washing 12 sets of feet, right? Not only was it inconvenient, it was hard. It was hard. Who has ever washed 12 sets of feet at a go, right? And now remember, this is the most important person in the room. These are dirty, smelly feet. This is absolutely awkward. 99% of the disciples are so shocked they do not know what to do. Only one brave one called Peter who's like, Jesus, surely you cannot do this. This is beneath you. That's in essence what Peter is saying. But Jesus insists and goes on and on. And there's even that little detail. Washed their feet and dried them with a towel. You can wash and move on. Yeah? But he dried them. He did a good job 12 times. And so Jesus decides to be the one who serves. In as much as it would have been easy for Jesus to say, Bartholomew, take one for the team, right? And Bartholomew could have done it, right? But he decides to be the one who does it. He decides to do it 12 times. Jesus, in this moment, he's facing all the obstacles that we face when it comes to serving. Entitlement, he has all the power. Convenience, cultural norms demand certain things. Comfort, to wash 12 feet that are dirty and messy, and ease. It is not easy. Still, he gets up from his seat. He's not entitled. He does the messy thing that needed to be done. He pushes through the inconvenience of even having difficult conversations with Peter. Because sometimes when you serve, people are going to misunderstand you and they're going to ask, what are you doing? Why are you doing this, right? He pushes through the discomfort and the difficulty of it all because he wants us to see what we need to be. And in one of those epic moments, Jesus concludes with these words that I would like us to read together in John 13, verse 12 to 15. John 13, 12 to 15. After he had washed their feet and put on his robe and returned to the table, he said to them, "Do you know what I have done to you? You call me teacher and Lord, and you're right, for that is what I am. So if I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet. For I have set you an example that you also should do as I have done to you. The power of this story is who it reveals God to be and who we should be as a result of being shaped and transformed by that God. And this God says, I have done this for you, that you may wash one another's feet. You know, when I tell you love one another, it can be a bit ambiguous. You know, you think you understand it until you say, by the way, what does that look like? But if I say serve one another, then you can begin to see how it can be translated into actions. Love equals serving. That is what Jesus is teaching us. And there are many ways we can do that. Why then do we serve? We serve because we are growing more and more in the love of Jesus. It is the love of Jesus transforming us that causes us to serve. After being here, being part of this community that is all about coming alive in the love of God, if you want to know if you're being impacted by that love, look at the next step. What is your serving like? And not only here, but beyond. Because Jesus in this story, he's telling us, remember, the story is framed by love, and the middle is all about serving. Love equals serving. The Jesus who loves us and loves us to the uttermost demonstrates that by washing dirty feet. The more we grow in the love of God, the more we serve. Serving will always go against the grain of what we tend to want. But for Jesus, there is no better way to show love than to serve. And that is what we are being called to. And I think it is now harder than it has ever been in history, because we are living in a world where everything is promoting convenience and comfort and ease. But when it comes to the soul, when it comes to relationships, when it comes to a hurting world, we have been called to demonstrate love by serving. We are not only to know that love for ourselves, we are to carry that love towards each other. It is not something we say, it is a way in which we act. Jesus in this scene begins by saying, I am the one who loves to the uttermost. Then the scene unfolds with him stepping aside from his status, taking off the robes of convenience, tying a towel around himself, and stooping low to wash dirty feet. And he even takes time to dry them. This moment holds an invitation for us, and at the same time tells us the reality about serving. It will not be easy. It will not be convenient. It will not be convenient. It will look like getting that text inviting you to help at a very inconvenient hour. We will have to get up. We will have to tie a towel and wash dirty feet. Before I conclude, I would like to leave you with one practical way of applying this, and it is captured in these words: I am servant. I am servant. Every once in a while during a sermon, something is so important that I would like to invite us to say it together. Let's say it together. I am servant. Once more. I am servant. I know some of you, like, Pastor, that English. Yes, I omitted the word I am a servant, right? Because I want it to scratch our minds a little. What this means is that you wear servant as an identity. You wear servant as a mindset. Wherever you find yourself, you have one task. I am servant. You go through life with the mindset of I am servant. You scan through life moment by moment, knowing that I am servant. I am the one who gets up from the table. I am the one who looks for any opportunity there is to serve. You make servant your core purpose. Your core purpose. You know, we also live in an era where certain phrases are popular. And one of the really popular phrases is a phrase called servant leadership, right? It has become quite popular. It is great. It is great. It says something about leadership. But I was looking at it and I was like, there's something missing in it. You see, servanthood becomes only a descriptor. Servant leadership, right? Servant leadership. Leadership is the main thing. Leadership is the main thing. But what if servant was the main thing? It could begin to sound something like leadership servant instead of servant leadership, or leader servant. You know what that begins to describe? You're primarily, first and foremost, a servant. Everything else is a descriptor of what the servant does. You are a servant who leads. A couple of examples that I have. Parent servant. Yeah? You're not first and foremost a parent. You're first and foremost a servant. What does that mean when they say, Daddy, come? You come. Right? Daddy, play with me. You? Because you are a parent servant. There's also another one, husband servant. You're primarily? Yeah, I was waiting for all the spouses. Where are you, right? You're primarily servant. Yeah, and husband is a descriptor. So when she says, honey, please pass by, you say, yes. Why is it that the ladies are the ones who are saying yes? All right, there's also another one, wife servant, right? Wife servant. You're primarily servant. There's even this one, friend servant. Friend servant. We go to the next slide. CEO, servant. Yes, you're the CEO. You're the team lead. Yeah, you know, it's so easy to say servant CEO, but you're CEO servant. You show up as a servant, and the CEO gets to be expressed through that. What are the next ones? Teacher servant, for the teachers who are here. Student servant, even the students here. Politician servant. We hope they will hear this. And finally, expatriate servant. I could not fit everything into the slides. Yeah? But it's to say, I am servant. I hope you live here and that is what you wear. I am servant. You will not serve when you are less busy or have a few more resources. If you wait till then, it will not be easy to serve even then. It will still be hard, inconvenient, and uncomfortable. Right now, as it is, you say, I am servant. You begin to push against the grain of conveniences, against the grain of comfort, against the grain of ease, and serve right now. Let servant be our core task, our core purpose, our identity. Let us keep scanning for ways to get up from our titles, from our conveniences and our comforts, and bend down and serve. I have an idea of where you might look for it. Look for where it feels sacrificial. Look for where sometimes it feels messy, like going out of your way, or even like handling a messy situation like dirty feet. Look for where it feels awkward. This is not what someone of my status does. Look for where it makes you be in tune with humility. You will always find that place because those places are plenty. And guess what you will find there? It is very less crowded. Not many people go there in an age of conveniences. And it doesn't even require a lot of expertise. Yeah. At that moment, when Jesus bent to wash dirty feet, I always imagine he was down. You know, you only access feet when you're down low. I always imagine he was looking up at the disciples. And I was wondering, who has the power in that posture? Jesus still has the power. Still, God had given everything into his hand. Bending down to serve did not take away his power. Serving does not diminish power and status. His serving, on the other hand, empowered his disciples, touched them in a big way. The thing is, you lose nothing when you serve. Of course, it costs you convenience and comfort and ease. It costs you your entitlement. But in terms of identity and power, you actually use power to bless another. There is not a moment where sincere serving harms or diminishes another. Sincere serving always empowers another. That's why I began by saying serving at its heart is about power and love. And this world can do with a lot more servants at heart, at mind, and in their deeds. And I hope and pray that you can be one of them. I'm going to wrap up with this story that I have told on several occasions here. You may be hearing it for the 5th time. But you know, a good story is meant to be told and retold, because a good story is meant to be learnt by heart. Because a good story is about wisdom in life, and you step into life with stories in our hearts. So this story is called 3 Questions. It is based on a story that was told by Leo Tolstoy, but this is a retelling of it. There was once a boy named Nikolai who sometimes felt uncertain about the right way to act. I want to be a good person, he told his friends, but I do not always know the best way to do that. Nikolai's friends understood and wanted to help him. If only I could find the answers to the 3 questions, Nikolai continued, then I would always know what to do. When is the best time to do things? Who is the most important one? And what is the right thing to do? Nikolai's friends considered the 3 questions. Sonia the heron spoke. To know the best time to do things, one must plan in advance, she said. Gogol the monkey, who had been rooting through some leaves to find something to eat, said, you will know when to do things if you watch and pay close attention. Then Pushkin the dog, who was just dozing off, rolled over and said, you can't pay attention to everything yourself. You need a pack to keep watch and help you decide when to do things. For example, Gogol, a coconut is about to fall on your head. Nikolai thought for a moment, then he asked his second question. Who is the most important one? Those who are closest to heaven, said Sonia, circling up in the sky. Those who know how to help the sick, said Gogol, stroking his bruised head. Those who make the rules, growled Pushkin. Nikolai thought some more. Then he asked the 3rd question. What is the right thing to do? Flying, said Sonia the heron. Having fun all the time, laughed Gogol the monkey. Fighting, barked Pushkin the dog right away. Then Nikolai thought for a long while. He loved his friends. He knew they were trying their best to help him answer his questions. But their answers did not seem quite right. Then an idea came to him. I know, he thought. I will ask Leo the turtle. He has lived a very long time. Surely he will know the answers I am looking for. So Nikolai hiked up high into the mountains where the old turtle lived alone. When Nikolai arrived, he found Leo digging in the garden. The turtle was old and digging was hard for him. I have 3 questions and I came to ask for your help, Nikolai said. When is the best time to do things? Who is the most important one? What is the right thing to do? Leo listened carefully, but he only smiled. Then he went on with his digging. You must be tired, Nikolai said at last. Let me help you. The old turtle gave him his shovel and thanked him. And because it was easier for the young boy to dig than it was for an old turtle, Nikolai kept digging until the rows were finished. But just as he finished, the wind blew wildly and the rain burst from the darkened clouds. As they moved towards the cottage for shelter, Nikolai suddenly heard a cry for help. running down the path, a cry for help. Running down the path, he found a panda whose leg had been injured by a fallen tree. Carefully, Nikolai carried her into Leo's house and made a splint for her leg with a stick of bamboo. The storm raged on, banging at the doors and windows. The panda woke up. Where am I? Where is my child? Then the boy ran out of the cottage and down the path. The roar of the storm was deafening. Pushing against the howling wind and drenching rain, he ran farther into the forest. There he found the panda's child, cold and shivering on the ground. The little panda was wet and scared, but alive. Nikolai carried her inside, made her warm and dry, then laid her in her mother's arms. Leo smiled when he saw what Nikolai had done. The next morning, the sun was warm, the birds sang, and all was well with the world. The panda's leg was healing nicely, and she thanked Nikolai for saving her. At that moment, Sonia, Gogol, and Pushkin arrived to make sure everyone was all right. Nikolai felt great peace within himself. He had wonderful friends. He had saved the panda, but he also felt disappointed. He still had not found the answers to his 3 questions. So he asked Leo one more time, when is the best time to do things? Who is the most important one? What is the right thing to do? The old turtle looked at the boy. Your questions have been answered, he said. They have? Asked the boy. Yesterday, if you had not stayed to help me dig the garden, you wouldn't have heard the panda's cry in the storm. Therefore, the most important time was the time you spent digging the garden. The most important one at the moment was me, and the most important thing to do was help me with my garden. Later, when you found the injured panda, the most important time was the time you spent mending her leg and saving her child. The most important one was the panda and her baby. And the most important thing to do was to take care of them and make them safe. Remember then that there's only one important time, and that time is now. The most important one is always the one you're with. And the most important thing to do, the most important thing is to do good for the one whom is standing by your side. For these, my dear boy, are the answers to what is most important in the world. When I hear that story, to me it's a good description of the boy wearing I am servant. No one will tell you when the next opportunity for serving will look like. But today I can tell you it will look like inconvenience, discomfort, going out of your way. It will cost you something. But still remember, I am servant. And just like the boy, the most important time is now. The most important one is the one you're with. And the most important thing will be to do the right thing for them. And that's why I cannot tell you go wash feet. I think what Jesus wanted us to see is that we should always have the readiness to serve. One of the loveliest scenarios that you can ever experience is being in an environment full of servants. And that's what I pray that this will be like. When you step into that environment, you feel it. It blesses you and it leaves a mark. May we be those servants. When the story of this church is told, may it be said that we are a church called Embracing God's Radical Grace. And also, we are a church called Serving with Compassion. And we want the next 200 and beyond to find us a people and a place where we are so keen on embracing and encountering God's radical grace, as well as serving with compassion. So may we be that family of grace and serving. May you leave this place today with a new identity. Who are you? I am servant. Well done, guys.